Minisode 8
of contesting wrestling, which is what this is.
Yes, this is that which you already know because you clicked on it and are listening to it with your ears.
Unless you clicked on it accidentally somehow, in which case, welcome.
Yeah, this is a great.
Well, you could have subscribed, it automatically downloaded. You know?
That's true.
You thought we were going to be Joe Rogan or some shit, but we're way better than that.
Yeah, we are. We are much better. I mean, it still will be a little while before we can beat his listenership, but because from what I understand, it's 80% of America listens to Joe Rogan at this point.
If you're going to listen to Joe Rogan, that's fine. Just remember not to take anything he says seriously.
Yeah.
Just remember to be critical about what his guests are saying because he isn't.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
He's just like, oh, what's your deal? Oh, it's so great.
I get
Yeah.
it.
And I think that it's kind of cool that there's something like that.
Sure.
That's just
You
like,
gotta
tell
seek
me
it
your
out,
fucking
you know?
bad shit ideas. Like,
Yeah.
let's hear them.
Yeah.
But I wish there was also the other kind of podcast where you bring people on and you're like, all right, this is why these things that you're saying are bullshit.
Yeah.
I mean,
harder to
people-
sustain that.
It would
Yeah,
be
people
cool.
won't come on your show, I think,
I
if you
guess
do
not.
that.
Penn and Teller should do a show like that.
Oh yeah, if I was full of shit, I would not go on Penn and Teller's show.
Yeah, right.
And I think they would bill it as Penn and Teller would never say anything, but I would trust he'd be sitting there with headphones on, sitting at a mic.
Also, I feel like I have heard Penn Jillette not react well to people calling him out on his bullshit in the past.
They did do a bullshit episode on themselves.
They
didn't
did one on themselves,
Yeah.
but they're not going to, like, in that episode, they did not sit down and be like, here's why our supply side libertarianism is
Sure.
perhaps flawed.
Yeah.
Here's why it's maybe not great. that
Ali
Penn
G-
Jillette, gets on Twitter and calls female comedian and stuff like that.
That's not good. The Ali G show was kind of like what I was thinking, you know, because he would trick people into coming on his show, and then he would, in his weird clandestine way, call out their bullshit.
He is a genius. Not all of his stuff hits, but he swings for the fences, and I can respect that.
Well, I feel like when he messes with people with actual power, that was the problem with his last show, because his last show had the one really interesting character, the Israeli soldier character guy that actually got the Republican representative fired because he got him to like attack things with his ass and all this stuff. And that was great. And then the other characters in that show were kind of just out there fucking with normal people. And I hate it. I hate it when prank shows do that. Like Eric Andre.
Yeah.
Like I fucking love Eric Andre's like studio bits. And sometimes the pranks are great. But like when he's messing with people with power. But like sometimes you watch an Eric Andre prank and you're like, man, that guy's just trying to go to work, dude.
Yeah.
And also that the job that guy is trying to go to definitely pays way less than Adult Swim is paying you for this. So like,
You know
come
something
on.
that was really great where somebody was messing with regular people? Because I don't usually like this either. There was one episode of the old Tom Green show where he went to Japan and was just like 6'3", loud, obnoxious Tom Green in public. And they react differently than Americans do. It's like he's on the Japanese subway where everyone is looking down and being silent. And he's not being mean. He's standing up and being like, does anyone here like bananas? How about bananas? And one guy looks up and he's like, we like quiet. You know, and then like he goes to the zoo and starts playing, because he's the butt of most of the jokes, starts playing the stupid American tourist. And what the people at the zoo don't know is that Tom Green is fluent in Japanese, and he just acts like he doesn't know what the hell is going on. So this is the Minisode.
Tom's a good guy. He's like my brother's best friend, actually.
Oh, that's great. I didn't like all of his stuff, but I always thought that Tom Green was coming from a good place.
I got to meet him at a show they did together, and he was
cool.
super cool.
Very ahead of his time.
Yes, very
Definitely
ahead of his time.
A lot of stuff. While some of the things that people, did afterwards that built up, like there would be no Tim and Eric without Tom
Certainly not.
Green.
Certainly no Jackass.
Certainly no Jackass. Yeah,
He opened the door for that kind of absurdist real humor.
Yeah. This is Minisode, where we will talk about wrestling.
Yes.
Eventually.
Reflecting on episode 8, where we covered Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi and Kenzo Suzuki versus Billy Gunn. I thought it was funny when reflecting on it. The Kenzo Suzuki Billy Gunn match you could call the Suzuki Gun match. And Suzuki Gun is the name of a stable in Japan, Minoru Suzuki's stable. It's Gun with one N instead of two, I guess.
I think Evan would dig Minoru Suzuki, an old bastard grandpa Minoru Suzuki.
He also does that like shoot style where it looks like he's really fucking killing the guy with wrestling, and he's a scary motherfucker. Yeah. We were talking about Joe and Loki in the premium episode, in one of our premium episodes, and he does that style where it's like a little bit disturbing because it's so real. Because
it really blends the it blurs the line between a wrestling match and an actual fight.
Yeah, he's a scary dude.
I want to do a whole episode on shoot style wrestling eventually.
So one quick little thing we are going to start adding to the minisodes, mostly because I spent a lot of time in the minisodes sitting here twiddling my thumbs without a whole lot more to add. For a while now, Doc and Ben have been on me to watch a serial of some kind, a wrestling serial, so I can get in the habit of watching a weekly show, following along. We tried NWA Power, which did not work for a variety of reasons, even before the Cornette controversy. And I just wasn't that into it. So I'm going to be trying to watch AEW and NXT every week.
And if you fall off on one of them, like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I want you to give both of them at least 3 weeks, and keep in mind that it's a huge glut of characters, and after 6 weeks, you'll really know.
Yeah.
So you started off by actually watching the first AEW episode.
Yeah. So
are you going to jump to current now, or are you going to?
I'm going to try to watch. So NXT, I might fall off for a little bit or something. I'm going to try to catch up on AEW. It seems like because it started around the time that we started this, and it's sort of concurrent, it seemed like it would be the most exciting for me to start watching that. Obviously, it's the pilot. That's the one that they put the most effort into. That's all I've seen so far. So if AEW gets shitty, that's something I'll have to learn as time goes on. I thought that pilot was really great. I thought it was a really good example of something that I feel like it takes all of the good stuff about wrestling, all the interesting stuff, and it is a very modern presentation in that it is presenting all of it without a lot of the bullshit that sort of you think of as old-fashioned with wrestling. I don't know, it seemed a lot less misogynistic, a lot less generally dumb. A lot more, I don't know, like, I just liked how the characters interacted with each other. I actually didn't mind the commentary. I thought the commentary was,
I really like the commentary on Dynamite. They have the 3-man booth with, and let me explain to you a little bit these 3 guys.
Sure.
There's Excalibur, who was the main commentator for PWG for years and years and years. He commentates under a mask, which I think is great. He was a wrestler for a while. He wasn't that great, and he just continued commentary. Very new school. He's very knowledgeable about the names of the holds and where everybody comes from. Very technical stuff.
He's one of the owners of PWG, so given that connection between AEW and PWG, that's one of the places they can kind of funnel talent from.
So sitting with him is Jim Ross, who's been commentating wrestling since the early 80s, I think, if not before he started Mid-South. I'm not exactly certain of the date. He had been frustrated for years that the WWE either wasn't signing him, or they did sign him back for a couple of years and then barely used him. And his attitude is don't hang up my jersey yet. I'm not done. I can do this. And sometimes he doesn't quite get the modern wrestling, but then he'll say, he's such a good announcer, he'll say, tell me why this is like this, and then Excalibur will. And so if you don't know, Excalibur will explain it to you.
Well, that's what I thought was nice, is that it seemed like they were really making an effort to get new fans.
Right.
To get like I was watching this, I'm like, oh, this is, it did 2 things really well. One is that it seemed like a great introduction. It seemed like, hey, if you aren't really that familiar with wrestling, we'll kind of break some stuff down for you and how it works. And then it also very much had the energy of, even though it was the pilot, it felt like we were halfway through the season already.
Yeah,
you're watching it and they present it in this way.
There was a reason for that. Before their television show got off the air, they did a series of large events that told the story together. Not a lot of them, like 3 or 4 over the last couple of years. And there is a web series that like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are on called Being the Elite. I've actually never watched it. You don't need to watch it to follow the stories, but it helps as a supplement, and it kind of like chronicled the beginnings of the ideas of all of this and so on. But that's why it seems like it's picking up in the middle, but they're not acting like, but you're right. They
built their fan base first. So when they had their first TV show, there's a rabid crowd who's totally into it.
It seemed like, because always the best stuff is always, I don't know, like, especially this is very much how podcasts work, where I feel like, you get into something and there is a feeling that it's been going on for a while, and like you get this sort of fear, like, oh no, I'm getting into this late, because all these other people already know about it.
Because we know how podcasts work. Because we're making a podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we record 3 episodes a week, and I'm very proud of us for doing that. And if I could toot our own horn a little bit, I think we're doing very well considering our experience level. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback, and we're just going to continue doing our thing.
Evan's the one who's actually, I think, really studied podcasts before he came up with this idea.
Yep, let's call it studying. Yep. Yes, let's not refer to it as just me filling the void inside myself with other people talking.
Whereas I can count the number of different podcasts I've listened to on one hand.
There you go.
So
So the third man in the booth, it was a very interesting choice, a man named Tony Schiavone. He was the lead broadcaster for WCW until they closed in 2001. He was a commentator in the 80s. He has his own podcast for the last couple of years. From the time that WCW closed in 2001, he did a couple of shots for TNA the next year. But basically from that time until he started his podcast like 3 years ago, he watched no wrestling. And while he was in WCW in the 90s, he never watched the WWF. So he doesn't have this gigantic knowledge base of the last 20 years of wrestling. So he's there to be impressed by things. He knows his wrestling and all that, but he sees something impressive happen. He goes, man, that's great. They do that now? And then Jim Ross and Excalibur can be more specific. So he's the voice perhaps of the lapsed fan, which is a big market. There are a lot of people who used to watch wrestling, and they can tune in. They know who the announcers are, so it's like old friends are talking to them. And Tony Schiavone has not been watching wrestling the whole time they haven't been watching wrestling. So there's not all this context you're missing.
Yeah, I was actually at a bar watching one of the AEW pay-per-views.
Isn't that great?
I
was at a bar recently, and they were showing Dynamite. Now, this is the first time I've ever been at a bar that they're showing wrestling, and it's not the WWE.
Well, my friend Wilkins, who has his own podcast, the Jobber Tears podcast.
Oh, yeah, big shout out to Jobber Tears. They're great.
Yeah, they host all these viewing parties all over New York City. So definitely look for those. They're some of the only wrestling viewing parties that don't have a cover. So
they expect you to buy food.
But even if you could not.
I mean, I would.
Yeah,
I
have.
Bar. It's a Legends bar, right?
They've done them in Legends Bar. The last one I went to was
I used to go to Legends Bar to see StarCraft.
I was going to say we went to Barcraft there a couple times.
I wish they did that more.
I saw it somewhere else the last time, somewhere on 35th Street. But so those are great. And so I met a fan who had not watched wrestling since WWF in the 90s. And something about AEW had sparked his imagination or caught his attention. And he's really into it. He was sitting there explaining to the other 2 people he was with who had never watched any wrestling what he could piece together of what was going on. But I think you're right, Doc. The 3 announcers each represent a different kind of wrestling fan.
Yep.
Excalibur represents the hardcore indie fan. Jim Ross represents the, longtime WWE fan, the person who's been watching this whole time and is more of a mainstream wrestling fan. And then, Schiavone is the lapsed fan.
I'm not watching as closely as I watch the matches.
Well, you shouldn't.
Yeah. I'm not taking notes.
Watching it in a bar, like with a couple drinks in you, is kind of perfect, really. Yeah.
And I thought there was a real variety between the matches, where you saw a bunch of different styles, you saw a bunch of different body types, you saw a bunch of different I don't know. It was nice. It was as the minisodes go on, I'll give you my feelings about AEW and NXT and stuff as
any characters that jumped out to you immediately?
I liked the was it Nyla Rose and Riho?
Yeah. To crown the first AEW Women's Champion.
Yes, I thought that was really interesting. I had seen you guys had shown me one of the comedic Japanese matches with Kenny Omega.
Yeah.
Right, and he seems
where he wrestled the little girl.
Yes,
that you showed you that.
Yeah. And so he seems like an interesting.
He's awesome.
Character.
He's really great.
Yes. He's the best bout machine, Kenny Omega.
Did Jericho do any? Jericho did some stuff.
Jericho
right?
did some stuff. I don't think he did like a ton. Like
he's been consistently the most entertaining part of that show for me. But
so yeah,
you have a lot of good Jericho stuff to come.
Alrighty, so let's get back into the meat of episode 8.
The first thing I really want to talk about is we kind of really put over Ring of Honor in this episode. And in the 2000s, when they were this small company owned by Carrie Silken, booked by Gabe Sapolsky, they were awesome. They were the cutting edge of indie wrestling. Current Ring of Honor, I mean, I haven't been into their product for many years now, for about a decade. I think the last just Ring of Honor show I went to might have been 2012, but by then I was already like not really into it. We've already mentioned that they're owned by Evil Sinclair Broadcasting, but in just the last few weeks, some really horrible shit has come out about the company.
A lot of dirt.
Yeah, Joey Mercury, who was one of the agents, and Kelly Klein, who was the top female talent on the roster.
She's their women's champion.
Yeah.
They never took the belt off her.
Have said that it just like horrible mismanagement, no proper medical attention to wrestlers, them rushing her back into the ring after she suffered a concussion a couple of times. Like really insulting ways that the management talked to them about their contracts and about their worth and stuff like that. It just all sounds bad. So I do not mean, I want to make it clear that we do not mean to put over Ring of Honor now as an example of great professional wrestling in any way.
Yeah, no, their deterioration over the last several years has been sad.
Of all of the things, like once you're at a point where you're a wrestling promotion and you're cutting corners in terms of safety and medical care, shut down and do something else with your life.
Yeah.
Because that is, if there is one thing that you really should not be fucking with running a wrestling promotion, it's people's goddamn, like, health and safety. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It seems they have really no respect for the talent at all and consider them interchangeable. And what did they say to... I heard Tommaso Ciampa say that he left Ring of Honor. What was it that like they were like, no one will ever pay you more than $20,000 a year to wrestle.
Right, and he said that he heard that and he was immediately like, oh, that's what you think of me. Okay, now his phrase was, okay, I don't care anymore. And they tried to backtrack it, and he's like, no, that's what you think of me. I'll do my remaining dates and I'll leave. And now he's like the top guy in NXT or one of the top guys in NXT. I don't know what he's making, but it's a lot more than $20K a year, that's for sure. And he's very happy there.
That.
You know?
That's what a top indie wrestler makes.
Well, a lot of them have full-time jobs otherwise, you know. If you're the WWE, you'll make money, especially if you're on top. But on the indies, like unless you're a merchandise machine like Joey Ryan or find other ways to monetize your stuff, it's like being in a band. Even if like you could draw a few people to your shows, you're only making money if you can properly monetize your brand.
Unlike a band, you're risking your fucking life and destroying your body night after night.
We're going to have to do, I'll have to start putting together notes and doing some research for this, but we're going to have to do like an episode on why wrestlers should form a union, what that would look like. We'll talk. There's like somebody in the New York scene who's trying to get that going, who's like really fighting for that.
Well,
right?
there's David Starr has been pushing it. It was actually
he's
someone
probably too famous for us to get, right?
I don't know.
We'll
can
see.
Ask him.
Yeah.
He's a real firebrand. He might be willing.
He's
to do
awesome.
something.
Yeah.
He spends a lot of time in England now, getting them.
He
to try
lives
and
in
unionize.
England.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
He makes a big point about how he moved to England because fuck the U.S. healthcare system.
Rob Delaney was a great comedian. He also did the exact same thing. He just moved to the UK and became a citizen, and now like does ads for the Labor Party and podcast appearances and stuff, talking about how unbelievably horrible the American healthcare system is.
Yeah, David Starr tweets a lot about labor.
But there was actually this week's AEW Dynamite. There was a guy front row center with a shirt that said "Unionize."
Nice. Yeah, we'll have to, because it's just like, I don't think there is a better example of worker exploitation than the relationship between a promotion and the talent in wrestling. Like it is the ultimate example of like, we are going to try to make as much money as possible off of you taking on all of the risk and doing everything, and all we do is we just have the space and we tell you what to do, and you take all the training, all the physical risk, all this. It's just, it's what a nightmare.
All the incremental improvements that have happened are great, but they're not enough. They're just not.
So on a lighter note, some stuff about Billy Gunn.
Billy Gunn.
So we mentioned his famous tag team, the New Age Outlaws. We actually never mentioned the name of his partner, who is the Road Dogg, who is now one of the main agents and creative forces in the WWE, and one of the better ones, I think. Like SmackDown was really good when he was in charge, and he had so many problems trying to keep it good that he eventually stepped down. I mean, that's not what he says, but that's what it seems like.
He's working with NXT now more, I believe, which is good for him. He must be good creatively, because he managed to have a very successful wrestling career with having a very unimpressive looking body, and he's very not athletic, and he never was. He also got way over, and they just went with it. He was asked once, like, when did you know you made it? And he said, I think it was the first $80,000 royalty check they gave me. It's like, that'll do it, you know?
Yeah, I was never a huge fan, but hey, you know,
he had his shtick. He
did it.
It was fine.
And apparently, he just really gets the wrestling business. So I did think of one other Billy Gunn match that I think might be the best Billy Gunn match, and that we're going to watch in a premium episode. A couple of premium episodes from now. When Billy was in Billy and Chuck, the tag team that we mentioned, the problematic for various reasons tag team that we mentioned.
Right.
And they defended their tag team titles against the team of Edge.
Oh, boy.
And Hulk Hogan.
Whoa, wow.
Yeah.
That
was the thing that happened for a little while there during Hogan's comeback.
That's something I'm really trying to picture. You know, I mean, I like Edge.
Yeah.
So I feel like he could.
Part of Edge's deal is that when he was a teenager, he went to WrestleMania 6 live in Toronto and saw Hogan Warrior. He was always a big Hogan guy for that.
Well, we'll talk more about it on that episode.
Yeah, get ready, listeners, because this upcoming Monday is going to drop an episode we've been really waiting for everybody to hear.
Oh, yes, the first of our two-parter on Hulk Hogan, which, by the way, if you listen to our last episode... All right, well, I guess by now, yes, it is the upcoming episode. If this Minisode had come out when it was supposed to be, I would have said, we said on the last episode that Hogan was going to be the next episode, but it's not. It's the one after. But time is, amorphous now.
We really need to stop, promising timing on things, because we record a lot, and we have to rearrange it.
No, and also, the main episodes... The mini episodes and the premium episodes all kind of happen on different timelines too.
Yes.
Like the main episodes exist outside of regular time and space, where they're sort of meant to be timeless. The premium episodes are obviously tied to the main episodes, but then we record them months afterwards, and then the minisodes are supposed to be happening in real time, in normal human space. But it's
we recorded these Hulk Hogan episodes in 2015. I can't really remember them,
It's weird. It's so we actually
we recorded them before the whole Hulk Hogan racism thing, and it's like what? So they sound really weird. No, we didn't.
We went back.
We talk about the racism
a little bit. A little bit. We kind of we don't take him fully to task about that, but I think there are plenty of resources where you can hear about that, because it was a huge problem.
Speaking of racism, so
Kenzo Suzuki?
So just a small correction, Doc. You had mentioned that Suzuki was originally supposed to be called Hirohito. You had called him General Hirohito. It was actually
he was Emperor
Hirohito.
Hirohito.
Emperor
Yeah.
Hirohito.
Was he the one in the famous picture with Patton? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Maybe
Part of the terms of the Japanese surrender
it would have
was
been him,
we're going to take like just a regular old photo of your emperor standing there next to like our general here
to
and
show that he's not actually a god.
Right, and he was like much shorter than the American general. It's like no, he's just a person. He's not like as much as the cult of the American president can become a problem. We're always at least told and led to believe that the American president is a human being.
Right. Well,
no, yes, a human
some people
being.
these days, I mean, if you listen to some of those televangelists talk about Trump.
Well, yeah, but they used to be a bigger deal anyway. Well, I could go off on televangelists, but that's a whole different podcast.
I would also
if you
argue
listen to the other side, they might tell you that Trump is some sort of space alien.
Yeah, or a demon or something. But, well, they say that about all the politicians.
I'd also say by the end of World War II, America probably looked at Patton as sort of a demigod-like figure.
But they didn't elect him president. They
didn't.
elected Eisenhower. That's
Also, speaking of racism, we mentioned that there aren't a lot of good representations of black people in wrestling. I think I was saying, when was the last black babyface who didn't dance? Now we have currently on the rise Keith Lee, who's fucking awesome. And,
I love Keith Lee so much.
And he just got a big shine at Survivor Series this year.
I think he's the next NXT guy after Adam Cole. That's just me thinking.
The guy to beat Cole for the title?
If I had to guess, I'd say it's going to be Keith Lee.
All right. Well, looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Are we any last thoughts?
Let's keep the mini a little bit mini. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Real quick then. What did you think of NXT?
I was gonna save that for the next mini episode.
Let's do this.
All right,
Which we're recording in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and these are also probably both gonna drop on the same day, so you could just listen to that.
We can put a gap of a day. Well, we'll debate this later.
Yes.
One more thing that I want to keep saying. We often talk a lot about our Patreon on our Patreon episodes to people who have already paid us.
Right,
and
yeah.
I want to and I know it's a little ham-fisted. I'm willing to be the ham-fisted one. We do another full episode.
You are the professional wrestler.
I am, and I will self-promote completely. Please, we're doing this. We would like to be professionals. We like to think we put out a good product. If you like our podcast, the regular feed, as most podcasts are, is always going to be free. These mini episodes are free. If you'd like more, we do a whole other episode every week. Covering more matches. We've done a lot of interesting stuff. There's now 7 or 8 of them up on our Patreon. Check us out on Patreon. If you like us, please consider giving a little bit every month. We can, do all of the good podcast stuff, get better equipment. If it gets really, really good, one of us can do this full time. So check that out. There's a lot of good stuff up, and every week there's more.
And we have some vague but large plans for 2020, and some, we might do some mini series or some interview series or stuff like that. All that's going to be behind the paywall. And all
we can really promise you about the future of the podcast is that the 3 of us work very hard on it. We are aware of how much time we need to put into it, and we're going to continue to do that as much as we can. We've all been in the creative arts in a variety of ways for enough years to know that it doesn't just happen. So we're going to continue putting our all into this, and a fair chunk of it is going to be behind the Patreon paywall. Please, if you like us, consider joining up.
And as much as Dockett has hammed it up as the professional wrestler, I, as the podcast and or YouTuber nerd, am going to tell you to smash that like and subscribe button.
Just destroy it.
Just destroy it. Much the way Samoa Joe smashed the pectoral muscles of Kenta Kobashi with his mighty chops.
All right.
That's pretty good.
I'm glad I got approval on that. All right. This has been Contesting Wrestling. You guys are the best. Thank you.